In today's video, I'm going to show you a few tricks to dealing with your Midea washing machine not draining, how to check things involved with the pump that could cause the issue. It's possible you could get the E2 code that would pop up regarding this pump as well, but it may not always appear, but if it did, it would indicate a failed pump. The first thing I would check is pretty easy, is the level of the drain hose. It needs to be at the level of the rear of the washing machine to work properly. If it's too high or too low compared to the rear of the console of the unit, it could have a siphoning issue causing it not to drain. The hose should be about 100 centimeters or 39 inches from your floor, and if it's, again, too high or too low, it may be the source of your issue. Some washing machines that Midea makes could have a clean out at the bottom, which could be unscrewed and checked for blockages at the pump, which would let you clean it out easily. But not every single model may have this washer pump clean out at the rear at the bottom if there's an obstruction, so you want to drain it either way. If your washer is full of water or you're worried about this step, you should be able to clear a lot of water out from the drain pump system even if it's not working. If you put the drain hose at or near floor level, it should siphon most of the water out. If there's water in the washing machine and this doesn't work at floor level, then there's an obstruction somewhere in the pump, and I'll show you how to access and test everything in just a moment. Now, let's assume though that you found a way to get the water out. To access the drain pump, you need to tilt the washing machine either on its front or its side to access the bottom. You could tape the lid to the washing machine at the top to keep it in place, or you would just be very careful when you rest the machine down for the lid not to flip. Once you have this done, here's the view underneath the washing machine with all the different parts. You should be able to easily locate the pump from here. It has a giant hose going to it. To access the pump and pump housing area, to remove it, you need to take a screwdriver and remove these 3 screws. They're either Phillips head or 10mm, depending on the setup of your washing machine. As a note, water is going to come out of this area in most cases, so you may want to put a towel down to be safe. The next thing you want to do in the process of this is to remove the tub hose from the pump with a pair of slip-jawed pliers. With that done, you want to look for obstructions both inside the washer tub as well as the hose going from the pump to the outlet drain hose. Somewhere in this could be blocked. You would want to use a light to look for things if no water came out of the hose earlier when we had to try to drain the machine. If this was the case, you just need to clear out the obstructions of the washing machine and you may be ready to return it to good working order. But in most cases, the pump needs to be tested. This model has a very long power wire going from another area of the washer, so I need to show you how to access it. It's kind of a pain. There's a bag of wires located near the rear of the washing machine PCB in a corner, which you can access from the machine being laid on the floor or on its side. To access the bag easily, you'd have to remove the screws from the back of the washing machine. Again, you could do it from underneath, but it's not easy to show on camera. You can reach for the wires where they go from the shift actuator into the bag, and it works the same way with the pump for the wires. This bag of wires holds all of the ones that are in the machine, and the wires go from this bag to the PCB. You would have to trace the drain pump wire and remove it from this cluster because the color of the wires are terrible on these and it could vary from model to model. You may have to remove cable ties in the process of taking these wires out, and also be very careful with the wires when you remove them. You would need to retie all the wires once you've tested or replaced them to make sure they don't move and jostle around. In the case of the drain pump, there was one surface mount cable tie that I had to work with to remove the drain pump from the wire cluster. Be slow and cautious when removing all the wires. Also, there was a cotton wrap for the wire clusters here that needed accounted for and slowly unwrapped as well, and required us to tape it back up when we put it back on. Now, when you have the pump removed, you can test it, but you could also test it with a multimeter on the machine before doing some of these steps. Set the multimeter to ohms resistance. Press the leads of the multimeter into the wire harness for the drain pump. You should get between 16 and 17 ohms of resistance on the pump. If it's much outside of that number, it needs to be replaced. Usually about 20% is a good margin on these kind of pumps. But there is one thing that can go wrong on these, even if the multimeter shows that it's okay, and that's if the drain pump impeller has been damaged or destroyed, and that's the plastic paddle on the inside of the pump. To access it for further testing, take a screwdriver and remove the 3 or 4 Phillips head screws on the pump housing itself. Once you removed all these screws, the pump housing can be removed from the pump motor. From here, you can move the paddles around and check for physical resistance. The pump should have 3 or 4 very firm segments that are kind of hard to push past, and once you do, it springs around. There are magnets on the inside of the pump, and if the paddles are really loose and damaged, the pump impeller has stripped out and needs replaced. If you need a replacement pump for the washing machine, I'm going to include a link in the description of the video with the correct type of model for this washing machine and many others. There are slight variations from model to model, so make sure to double check your washing machine model number with the link to confirm that you have the right pump for this machine. Now, if the drain pump's bad and you're replacing it, simply attach it back into the wire cluster of the machine and reroute it where the pump was in the first place. Be careful with the wires and wire cluster. I've had wires break due to inspecting these parts on the machine, and it caused a big issue. Once you have everything routed, retie and reassemble the bag with the wires in place. It should get mounted on the side of the machine with a metal wire tie. Once you have the new pump ready to be installed, and once all the wires are routed, you're going to reattach the tub hose to the pump system. Then reinstall the 3 screws that go from the pump housing to the drum of the washing machine. Make sure that any wires from the pump are secured in place with cable ties as needed. Now, with the pump back in and running the machine after testing, if this did not fix your issue, one question you could have is with the wire harness for the drain pump to and from the PCB itself. To inspect or test for this, you would have to access the PC and the wires from the back of the machine, or when the machine was laid on its front, like you saw earlier. You would unplug the wires from the control board at the pump, which is CN5, and test for continuity or ohms between pin 3 and pin 6 on the wires going to the pump. This would test from the wiring of the board itself to the pump. If you get continuity, then the board would be bad, not triggering the drain pump to fire. If you didn't get a signal, though, the wiring from the board to the pump is faulty somewhere, causing the issue, and it could be in that wire bag we looked at earlier. And these are all the major steps I would look for on a Midea washing machine that is having drainage issues. Again, I'll have a link to the pump and PCB if it needs replaced, and it should show some of the other Midea videos we have now. Have a great day.